I had not spoken to my mother in 10 years. Not one call, not one message, not a birthday card or a holiday text or an accidental run-in at a grocery store. 10 years of complete and deliberate silence on both sides. So when a number I didn't recognize called me on a Tuesday afternoon, I almost didn't answer. But I did. The man on the other end introduced himself as Gerald Huang. He said he was an estate attorney. He said he had been trying to reach me for 3 weeks. He said my grandmother, the woman I had not been allowed to see since I was 18 years old, the woman my family had worked very hard to keep me away from, had passed away 6 weeks earlier. And then he said something that changed everything. He said, "Olivia, your grandmother drew up a second will 6 months before she died. You are the sole beneficiary of her estate." I sat down on the floor of my apartment hallway. I don't remember deciding to sit, my legs simply made the decision for me. The estate was valued at $2.7 million. My family had already filed the first will in probate, the one that left everything to them. They did not know the second one existed, but Gerald Wang did, and now so did I. My name is Olivia Chen. I am 28 years old. I am a nurse. I was thrown out of my family home at 18 over a lie, and my grandmother, quietly, privately, across 10 years of separation, had never stopped watching over me. There is a particular kind of strength that gets built in people who have had to start from nothing at the age of 18. It is not the loud kind. It does not announce itself. It does not need an audience. It is the kind of strength that shows up at 6 in the morning for a hospital shift after studying until midnight. The kind that says thank you to the nursing professor who gives you a second chance on a practicum you almost failed because you were working 2 jobs and sleeping 4 hours a night. The kind that learns very early that the world does not owe you softness just because your family didn't give it to you. I became a nurse because I wanted to work in a field where what you do matters, where skill is what earns you a place in the room, where no one can take away what you have genuinely learned. I am good at my job. I have worked hard every single day to be good at my job. I built a life that is entirely my own. But if I'm being honest, and the lounge is a place for honesty, there was a part of me that never fully healed from what happened at 18. Not because I was weak, but because the wound was made by the people who were supposed to be the ones holding the bandages. And some wounds stay tender, no matter how much time passes, until the truth finally comes out. I need to tell you about what happened when I was 18, because without it, nothing that comes after makes full sense. I was the middle child in a family of 4. My older sister, Jennifer, was the academic, the one my parents pointed to the way people point to a trophy. My younger brother, Kevin, was the charming one, the one who could do no wrong because he had a way of making everyone around him feel like they had just won something by being near him. And then there was me. I was the quiet one, the reader, the girl who spent weekends at my grandmother's house by choice because it was the only place I felt fully at ease. My grandmother's name was Margaret. She lived 20 minutes from us, a small, precise woman with silver hair and an unflinching ability to look directly at whatever was true in front of her, even when everyone else was busy looking away. She was the person I talked to about everything. She was the person who first told me I had the kind of steadiness that would serve me well in a caregiving field. She was the only person in my family who listened to me the way people need to be listened to. When I was 18, second semester of senior year, already accepted to a nursing program, 3 months away from graduating, my mother told me that I had done something I had not done. She said I had stolen money from her jewelry box. The amount she named was $400. She said she had been missing it for weeks. She said she had asked around and that the evidence pointed to me. There was no evidence because I had not done it. I told her that clearly and directly. She did not believe me, or she chose not to. My father did not intervene. Jennifer said she had suspected it for a while, which told me something about Jennifer I have never forgotten. Kevin said nothing, which told me something about Kevin too. My mother told me I had 1 week to leave the house. I left in 4 days. I stayed with a nursing school classmate's family for 3 months until I could get on my feet. I graduated, I enrolled, and I did not look back. What I didn't know, what I had no way of knowing at the time, was that my grandmother had asked my mother directly what had happened, that my grandmother had not believed the story, that my grandmother had tried multiple times over the years that followed to reach me, and that those attempts had been blocked. Messages not delivered, a letter returned unopened. My phone number changed twice during years when I was moving apartments and couldn't keep the same line. I did not know she had been trying. I thought she had simply accepted what my mother said. I thought she had moved on with the family that remained. I carried that belief for 10 years. I carried it quietly, alongside everything else I carried. It was wrong. Gerald Huang told me this, carefully, gently, the way a good attorney delivers information that is both a gift and a grief, during that first phone call. He told me my grandmother had hired a private investigator 3 years earlier to find my current contact information. He told me she had located me. He told me she had watched from a distance as I built my career and my life. He told me she cried when the investigator sent her the report. And then, 6 months before she died, while she still had full capacity, while her mind was still completely her own, she sat down with Gerald Huang and changed her will. She left everything to me. Not to my mother, who had lied to her, not to Jennifer, who had piled on, not to Kevin, who had said nothing. To me, the one who had been pushed out, the one she had never stopped believing in. Gerald told me that my grandmother had included a letter with the will, a personal letter, not a legal document, not admissible in court, but intended for me alone. He read it to me over the phone, slowly, the way you read something that deserves that kind of care. She wrote that she had known from the beginning that I had not taken the money. She wrote that she had confronted my mother and had been told to let it go, to keep peace, to not divide the family further. She wrote that she had made the worst decision of her life when she had listened to that advice. She wrote that she had watched me from a distance for 3 years and that she was proud of every single thing I had become. She wrote, "You built your life without any of us, and it is a beautiful life. I hope what I leave you doesn't complicate it, but I need you to have it because it was always supposed to be yours." I sat on that hallway floor for a long time after Gerald finished. Then I asked him what we needed to do next. He told me my family had already filed the original will in probate, submitted 3 weeks after my grandmother's passing. He told me the second will, properly executed and witnessed, superseded the first. He told me we needed to file immediately and prepare for a challenge because my family will almost certainly contest it. I asked him how strong our position was. He said, "Olivia, your grandmother planned for this. She was thorough." I told him, "So am I." Gerald had already done more preparation than I knew. My grandmother, it turned out, had not simply changed her will and hoped for the best. She had anticipated a contest. She had built a case alongside her estate plan. The second will had been executed in Gerald's office with 2 independent witnesses, neither of whom had any connection to my family. A physician's note documenting her full cognitive capacity on the date of signing had been obtained and filed with the will. Gerald had kept everything in his private records, entirely separate from any document my family had ever had access to. She had also written a separate, signed, notarized statement, not the personal letter but a legal affidavit, explaining her reasons for the change. She stated clearly that she was of sound mind. She stated that she had been deliberately kept from contact with me by members of her family. She stated that her original will had been made under relational pressure that no longer reflected her wishes or her values. This affidavit was attached to the second will as a supporting document. My family had no idea any of it existed. Gerald filed the second will in probate court within 48 hours of our conversation. The court issued a notice to all parties, including my mother, Jennifer, and Kevin, that a superseding will had been submitted and that the original probate filing was suspended pending review. My mother called me for the first time in 10 years, 4 hours after that notice was served. I did not answer. Gerald answered for me, in the way that attorneys answer for their clients, professionally, with documentation, and without any room for negotiation that hadn't been earned. The probate hearing was not a shouting match. I want you to know that, because I think when people imagine a family inheritance dispute, they picture raised voices and pointed fingers and dramatic accusations across a courtroom. That was not what this was. What it was a room full of documents and 2 legal teams and a judge who had done this many times before, and a silence that had a particular weight to it. My family had hired an attorney who argued that the second will was invalid on the grounds that my grandmother had been subject to undue influence, specifically my influence, which was remarkable given that I had not spoken to her or seen her in 10 years. Their argument was that I had somehow manipulated an elderly woman into changing her will without ever making contact with her. Gerald presented the private investigator's records, which my grandmother had authorized him to obtain, showing that the contact had gone in the opposite direction. My grandmother had found me, not the other way around. He presented the physician's capacity evaluation, he presented the notarized affidavit, he presented the witness statements from the 2 independent witnesses who had been present at the signing. Then he presented something my family had not anticipated. Gerald had requested the phone records for my grandmother's personal cell account for the 2 years prior to her death. In those records were 17 calls to a number my family did not recognize. Gerald identified that number as belonging to a woman in my nursing cohort, a friend of mine who at my grandmother's quiet request had agreed to pass along updates about my life without telling me. My grandmother had been asking about me, regularly, consistently, for 2 years. My mother sat across the aisle and listened to all of it with the expression of someone watching an entire narrative collapse. The judge did not take long to deliberate. He validated the second will as the governing document. He dismissed the undue influence claim for lack of evidence. He confirmed me as the sole beneficiary of the estate of Margaret Li Hua Chen, valued at $2.7 million. My mother did not look at me when the hearing ended. Jennifer gathered her things quickly and left without speaking. Kevin paused near the door on his way out, and for just a moment I thought he was going to say something. He didn't. He left. Gerald walked with me to the elevator. When the doors closed, he said, "She would have been glad today." I believed him. The calls started 11 days after the hearing. My mother first, then Jennifer, then an aunt I had not spoken to since I was 17. Each of them with a different opening, some apologetic, some practical, some performing a warmth that had nowhere to go after 10 years of silence. My mother's message said she had always believed in me. Jennifer's said she had never agreed with how things were handled. My aunt said family was family, and that she hoped I would remember where I came from now that I had the means to help. I saved every message. I did not return any of them. I am not a person who nurses bitterness. I want to be clear about that because I think it matters how you understand what I did next. I did not refuse them out of anger. I refused them out of clarity. There is a difference, and the difference is important. What my grandmother left me was not just money. It was a statement, a deliberate, legally constructed, carefully protected statement about who she believed I was and who she believed had wronged me. To reconcile with the people she had specifically named in her affidavit, the people she had documented as isolating her from the granddaughter she loved, would have been to undo the very thing she had worked so hard to say. I would not undo it. What I did instead was this. I established a scholarship fund in my grandmother's name, the Margaret Li Hua Chen Foundation, specifically for young people who have been estranged from their families before the age of 21 and are pursuing careers in healthcare or caregiving. The scholarship covers tuition, housing, and a small living stipend for 2 recipients each year.
The first two recipients were selected by a panel that included Gerald Huang and one of my nursing professors. I attended both award ceremonies. I spoke at each one about my grandmother, not about what she left me, but about who she was, about how she paid attention, about how she never stopped believing in the people she loved, even when she couldn't reach them, about how the most powerful thing you can do for someone is refuse to let the wrong version of their story become the final one. That is what she did for me. I am still doing it for her. If Olivia's story reached something in you, if you know what it feels like to be cut off from someone you loved, or to wonder if the people who were supposed to protect you ever really saw you at all, hit the like button. Not for the channel, for Margaret, for every grandmother who kept watching from a distance and never stopped. Before you go, I want to ask you something real. Is there someone in your life, maybe from your past, maybe from your family, who you lost contact with and have always wondered about? Someone who maybe saw you more clearly than anyone else did? Drop something in the comments, even just their first name. Let's hold space for them tonight. And wherever you are listening from, your city, the time on your clock right now, drop it below. The lounge is open all over the world, and I want to know where you are tonight. If this story belongs to someone you know, someone who was pushed out and has been building quietly on their own ever since, share it with them, not as a message, just as a reminder that being believed, even late, even across distance, even after everything, is still one of the most healing things that can happen to a person. I'll see you in the next story. The lounge is always open.